First up is Charlotte Richards, who is head of the Insight team at Penguin. She's worked in another of other industries before she came to the publishing world. She worked for financial services and charities, and what she does is try and make sense of big data. So she's been very involved in a project trying to putting the consumer at the heart of Penguin's publishing. She's going to talk about how Penguin are managing their data, bringing it all together into a new Insight hub. And I know we're not all Penguin, we don't all have Insight hubs, but there are things that everyone can do to make sense of the myriad data sources we have available to us. Then we're going to pass on to Rachel Chu, who's Chief Marketing Officer at Open Road Integrated Media. So she's come from the US to talk to us today. And before she was at Open Road, she worked in online product development at HarperCollins. Open Road, as I'm sure most of you know, is a digital publisher, multimedia content company, and they work with a lot of publishing partners marketing through a proprietary online platform. And what she's going to talk about today is 3 kind of themed marketing campaigns she's worked on. So not single title campaigns, but where some books have been brought together around a theme or an event. So I think that's going to take a really interesting view on that. And then last but not least, we got 2 speakers. Vicky Watson from Vintage, where she's marketing manager. In 2012, she won both the Book Marketing Society Marketing Campaign Award and the Future Book Innovation Award for a campaign she put together for the Night Circus. She's going to be talking with Hattie Adams-Smith, who's from ThinkJam, a digital agency, who's working in online PR, social and digital creative campaigns, not just in publishing, but also in theatre and film world. And they're going to talk about their hugely successful campaign. Thank you. That they put together for Helen Fielding's latest Bridget Jones book, Mad About the Boy. So we've got a variety of different things that we're going to talk about this morning. And without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Charlotte.
Wow, it actually worked. That's amazing. Thank you, Joe. So, as I'm sure you're all aware, in recent years, the world of data has done nothing short of explode. According to IBM, 90% of the data in the world today was created in the last 2 years alone. Online retailers, social media, smart device ownership, all these things and more have contributed to the profusion and abundance of so-called big data. And it's only going to get bigger. Not only that, but consumers have become much more data savvy, and they've been trained by retailers and platforms such as Amazon or Spotify to expect relevant, mutually beneficial relationships with their brands. Their options are broad, their attention spans are short, their standards are high. You only have one shot of proving to them that you are worth their time. Our other challenge is one of standing out from the crowd. If anyone can put their content out into the world for consumers to discover, how do you make your content, your book, the one that is noticed? But if the risk of losing consumers is growing, so is the opportunity to bring them closer to your business than ever before. And I believe, quite firmly, that using and understanding data is the key to making this happen. So today I want to talk to you about my role at Penguin, and latterly Penguin Random House, and how it's evolved on the journey to creating a central analytics hub to bring data to life in a publishing context. I joined Penguin 2 years ago, with no experience in publishing whatsoever, but lots of experience in helping businesses such as Visa, B&Q, Waitrose and Just Giving use their data to understand their customers. And so our journey began. But before we could get anywhere near doing any clever analysis or targeting, sorry, this is Sherlock, our Insight Penguin. Before we could get anywhere near doing any clever analysis or targeting, we had to find some data to work with. I've found that people often believe that their businesses are data poor, that they have no data, or that the data they do have is entirely useless. And Penguin was no exception. But it's amazing what you can find when you lift the lid, have a good root around, and discover plenty of dusty old spreadsheets or hidden files that nobody ever thought was useful. Once we started to pull this data out into the open, it was actually remarkable how data rich we were to the point of drowning in the volume of information that was available. So our next step was to bring all those different types of data together, a marriage of many types and forms of data to create a single source of the truth. This was really fiddly work, making sure we understood what different bits of data meant, how they all fitted together. But with a bit of focused time and effort, we were able to create the engine, our database, and the foundation for everything that we do. Once our data was in place, we then brought in new tools to make our data look beautiful and easy to understand. We've been using a brilliant data visualization tool called Tableau, but there are lots of others out there. And what we've done is, using that, we've replaced our manually created Excel charts that people had to churn through every week, and created automated dashboards, some examples of which are up on the screen. This allows the business to self-serve and get the data that they need faster and in a more visually appealing way. The key principle throughout has been data democratization. I'm trying to make it a word. I don't know if it is yet, democratization. And it's about putting data in the hands of the business rather than keeping it locked away out of sight. Finally, we've established a small team of specialists to enable us to provide expert advice in an area that was entirely new for Penguin. During the recruitment process, we looked for technical analytical skills using tools such as SAS, R, and SQL, and practical experience in things like pricing analysis, model building, and marketing performance measurement. We've recruited outside of publishing from analytical teams in sectors such as supermarkets and charity. This was quite deliberate, and it's partly because the sorts of skills we were looking for are more common in these sectors, but also because a core part of the Insight Hub's remit is to bring new approaches to the business and to challenge the status quo. It can be really hard to take this approach as a non-publisher in a publishing world, and there is so much that the team and I are learning about publishing every single day, but having fresh eyes on long-standing challenges can be immensely powerful. This wasn't enough, however, as you can have all the fancy data and shiny tools in the world, but it won't help your business if people don't see the value in it. So we had to prove the approach, one case study at a time, working with people across the business to use data to solve their specific business questions. We looked at marketing performance, trying to quantify the value of posters in train stations. We looked at the impact of local events, trying to prove to authors such as Claire Balding or Alain de Botton that their efforts in attending book fairs and signings were worth it. And we looked at the trends in online search, tracking what was hot each week and how Penguin was comparing against competitors. And even just from our initial case studies, we started to pull out some useful stats and facts about our consumers. It may seem trivial that we identified that readers of erotica were more likely to live in Middlesbrough than Tunbridge Wells, but as a starting point for understanding who our consumers were, it was a really easy step for the business to make. The great thing about this approach was that with each case study delivered, we started to make it really clear what it was that we were useful for and how we could help the business in their day-to-day jobs. And that's the first step to winning hearts and minds. So what have we learned? Well, I was once told by an ex-boss of mine that one of my strongest skills was that I wasn't afraid to ask the stupid question. I tried to take that as a compliment, because I think what it means in practice is that there is real value in questioning long-held assumptions, in trying to get to the bottom of why and how things are being done, and being open-minded in finding alternative solutions. It's also about being disruptive in a positive way, being willing to make a change even if that change isn't ultimately successful. Facebook's philosophy isn't move fast, break things for nothing. The fear of failure can be far more damaging than the actual impact of failure, but changing people's perceptions of this can be a real challenge. An area where I often see this challenge, and one I think that's probably true for many people in this room, is around measuring marketing success or failure. If you work in an industry where you sell toilet roll or celery, a bad campaign might not seem so bad in the long run, because next month you can have a go at selling toilet roll or celery again. But in an industry where books get one shot at being launched, and the teams involved have a genuine emotional connection with the content and the author, talking about marketing hits or misses can feel very threatening, and understandably so. We've tried to tackle this by finding advocates in each area of the business, people who have a natural affinity with data and who are happy to be guinea pigs in trying out new things. These advocates are absolutely invaluable, as working with them provides the credibility needed to persuade those who are a bit more cautious or sceptical. Myth-busting has also been core to what we're trying to do, taking the things that everyone knows or assumes or has inherited and trying to find the facts beneath them. And these myths aren't unique to one business or to publishing. You find them again and again across many industries. One of the myths that I found most interesting in a publishing context has been the strong feeling that consumers who buy highbrow literary fiction are very distinct from those who buy more popular titles. Although we haven't done sufficient analysis to thoroughly prove or disprove this myth, early indications are showing that consumers buy and interact with lots of different things depending on their mood and their purpose. There is absolutely no reason why one consumer can't read The Personal MBA, Sweet Tooth, Peppa Pig, and 50 Shades of Grey. Another common myth that I found across a number of businesses that I've worked in is that there is a single right answer to everything. Sadly not. Unfortunately, analysis is all about interpretation, and there may not be a right answer. You need to be willing to try different things, experiment, and see what works. The reality of analytics is that it's much closer to a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing and no box to work from than a mathematical formula with one predetermined outcome. Success can and should mean different things in different circumstances. It might be an increase in sales or profit, or an increase in the number of people who've liked you on Facebook, or an improvement in the quality of the data that you send out to Amazon about your products, or how hot your brand is on Google. The full picture of who your consumers are and what they want from you can only be understood when you look at it from 360 degrees. I believe that to be a force for positive change in the business, insight has to be approachable, not impenetrable, useful, not just interesting, and about people, not about data. I think that a common misconception is that the purpose of analytics is somehow to replace human decision-making or to stifle creativity. There is no replacement for the brilliance and ingenuity of the human mind. Insight should support innovation, not stifle it, by providing a foundation for making brilliant ideas even more brilliant. So what next? Well, our journey so far has led us to the point where we've launched an analytics service to the business, and we're starting to lift the lid on understanding our consumers and measuring the impact of what we do. I've recently stepped into a Penguin Random House role, and it's been really great to understand more about what the Random House team have been doing over the last few years. As a joint force, we have some pretty exciting and pretty complementary skills, and I look forward to working with the team over at Random to see what we can do. I think it's also important to say that we're nowhere near our final destination. The biggest change isn't a systems or data one. It's not about building the perfect model or finding the perfect killer data source. It's a long-term cultural shift in how people view the role of data in their day-to-day lives and building confidence and knowledge in using and talking about this data across the business. If I've learned anything from my time at Penguin over the last 2 years, it's that you shouldn't be afraid to start just because the journey's a long one. The benefits from taking just a few steps alone are enormous. Thank you.
We'll wait one moment. There we go. So we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk specifically about campaigns that at Open Road we've done. And I'm going to try and take you through from the smallest, just capturing search words and owning search terms, all the way up to what we call a blockbuster, to give everybody in the room something to take home or something to grab onto that's useful. And I think it marries well with what Charlotte was talking about, because what you're going to see here is what we do as a first stage of the campaign, and then what we're working on right now is really mixing in audience segmentation and cooking and finding the larger audience once we grow that first audience. So I'll jump right into it. I can't see that screen, so let me just load up my screen at the same time. Here we go. I think just to go back for one moment to talk about Open Road, because it will give context to what I'm going to talk about today, is that Open Road is a digital publisher, and we really focus on marketing, and we're primarily a backlist publisher. So I think that's important when I talk through the campaigns that we're going through today, because unlike what Charlotte was talking about that small window and getting a book out and really focusing in an 8-week period of time, what I'm talking about is marketing over the lifespan of the book and thinking about your titles from year to year, and the way that we do that in order to make sure that our titles and our authors are in the conversation with the consumer and with the reader for a lifetime. And so one of the things we do in planning is as a team, and when I say team, it means all of the imprints, or what we call verticals, come together, and we have meetings literally weekly where we're plotting out a 5-month calendar. And we've started to do this in order to really see the connections between books around themes and topics, not within their current imprints or verticals, so that we can really think about what we're going to do for social and advertising and retail around collections, if you will, rather than single title or specific topics that are related to a specific type of book. And this will be more clear as I move on. And it's interesting because as a backlist publisher and as an ebook publisher, we literally go from signing a contract to publishing a book in about 90 days. So we're not in the 1 year to 18-month life cycle of figuring out marketing. And so this push to identify campaigns 5 months out was a huge stretch for us. You know, it may seem like that's a short window. For us, that's a huge window because we're really kind of pushing forward. We're getting books out in a quick way. We roughly do 200 or 300 books a month right now. And so for us, 5 months is about the sweet spot for having enough time to get the books published, get a feel for them, and then think about how to bring them together. In doing so, we're thinking about themes and topics, and you'll see in a minute a couple of examples, but we create title lists, and what this means is that once we have these meetings and we come up and identify the idea, for example, the Newbery Awards in the US, and when those are announced in January, or we're thinking about banned books and censorship, and that's always in September. Everybody across the company contributes into a single document the titles that they think make sense for that particular campaign. So there's shared documentation where you can throw all of the titles together. And we put together a rationale for the campaign. This is kind of a 1 to 2 sentence description of why we want to bring these books together and what we think consumers would be interested in. And at that point, early on, we actually go out to the retailers with what we call one-sheets. These are just small descriptions, the title list, what we think we're going to do for advertising, publicity, et cetera. And this, again, is about 5 months prior. And the reason we do this is because at that stage, we can gauge what retailers are interested in, whether or not they think this is part of their editorial planning calendar. And whether they are or not then comes back to the team to decide how big this promotion or this campaign can be. It's not that we won't do things without the partnership of a retailer. We do many, but it helps us decide early on what the budgeting looks like, how many partnerships we need out in the world with editorial and blogs, or whether or not this is a promotion or a campaign that's going to be specifically geared to just working with retail. At that point, we go back, and I was saying we look at budgets. And I think there's something super interesting that's going on, and I've talked to a number of people about it, with the shift with data, with the shift with backlist and ebooks and the availability all the time. We're used to getting a book, acquiring a book, and having a budget that is for marketing and launch of the book. At Open Road, we actually don't function that way. We don't do our allotment at the title level or even necessarily at the author level. When I go to my team, I ask for a quarterly estimate on what they'd like to spend. All of those budgets come back in, and then we actually pull the money out quarter by quarter around these campaigns and themes. And it kind of works its way out that every book gets touched and the authors all get touched, but you're not thinking strictly about, I have $200 to spend or 400 pounds to spend on this title for this year. It frees you up from a marketing perspective to be creative and to really kind of think about what the best thing is to do for the title, and then we kind of pool budgets together and think about how those books, maybe 50 books, get a little bit from each budget. So I think budgeting is something that is not talked about a lot. I'm excited, I think a future panel would be super interesting to talk about what the changes are in the idea of a budget. But for Open Road, we have an allotment that I have for the year, and then quarter by quarter, I just ask the team what they'd like to achieve and do, and that's how we do it, which allows us to do the campaigns you'll see. Iterating and building as you go, A/B testing. The great thing about launching something, especially if it's a month long, is that within a few days you see the data coming back in and you're able to tweak headlines and tweak the content that's going out to see what's working. To that end, we do a lot of, here's money for Facebook, here's money going off for text ads, mobile ads. Within the first 72 hours, the ads that are winning get the allotment of the budget versus saying, here, go run for 4 weeks. And postmortems. These tend to be the things that get crossed off the list most quickly because you're kind of on to the next thing. I can't stress enough how important it is to have a time to reflect back and look at what you've been doing in the marketing area and decide which things have worked or not, and then actually log those so that going forward, teams can take a look at the campaign and see what has worked. Okay, I'm going to jump into 3 examples. The first is the easiest, and this is actually something quite new for what we're doing. And I think, especially when you're talking about, I remember sitting in meetings years ago at a larger publisher, and we were talking about the budget is, $50,000, and here's the big launch. And it was hire an agency, build the website, and get everything out. And within 12 weeks, the money was all gone, and the book had started to have some lift, but basically we needed the extra time. And so one of the things that we found is thinking in smaller chunks. And search terms is a great way to kind of think about your backlist and think about an ongoing campaign. And so what we have been doing is actually going through and going into Google Insights and looking for the search terms that are not necessarily, you're not looking for the terms like mystery and thriller books where every retailer is going to come up at the top and it's going to be quite hard to get those search terms. But you are looking for the search terms, for example, the one that we just did was authors like Agatha Christie. People are constantly looking for similar books and similar authors. And the thing is that those are the types of search terms that you can own as a marketing team. And so what we identified is when HarperCollins in the US launched the Agatha Christie ebooks, there was a lot of buzz and a lot of people talking about it. And lo and behold, when you do that search term, there wasn't a lot there that really was representative of looking for other authors similar. And so what we did is we created marketing content. We created a blog piece which was exactly that. If you're looking for authors like Agatha Christie, here are the authors that are really wonderful. And then surrounded that with an advertising campaign, which included, you can see, no, you can't, sorry. There you go. You can see we did the Facebook ad, which got a ton of attention, which was exactly, if you're looking for books like Agatha Christie, we actually had to display ads on Google. Facebook did much better, so we ended up upping that budget. We did linking in strategies, working with a company called Outbrain or StumbleUpon, which is you're doing keyword and targeting so that you see those links at the bottom of a page which direct you in. And lo and behold, over time, over the first 6 weeks, we started to rise up in the search rankings, and we're now #2 in Google when you're looking for authors like Agatha Christie. And so we started to then replicate this method, and we're really talking about more long tail. But the point is that we had over 10,000 visits to this blog post in the beginning. 4 months later, we're still at 1,000 visits a month on the blog post. And this is the kind of thing that you're talking about a low-lying budget of around $50, 30 pounds. This is not something that you've spent thousands of dollars on, but when you look at your list and you have the idea that you can take buckets of 10 books at a time and create key terms, it really is successful. So this is one methodology, and we've now, if you look, for example, hard-boiled crime, a subgenre, again, we're on the first page of Google, and there you have our list of all of our hard-boiled crime books. And so it's a really effective way for the long tail for your backlist to group books and to look at search. The next way that we move on is in thinking about, again, because of backlist and not single title, how do we look at milestones and holidays, and how do we then group books? And this is where the planning comes in. This is just a smattering, but everything from Dragon Week to the Edgar Awards, which are the big mystery awards that happen in April, baseball season and the kickoff in the US right now, Banned Book Week, the assassination of JFK, we have a lot of JFK titles. And so doing these collections and themes and making sure that each of the groups is kind of coordinating social and broadcast and retail merchandising. And then digging in, looking at, here is our Baseball Reads campaign. And so this was building ebook baseball cards and a landing page which really highlighted the best baseball books, going out to one of the top blog fan sites called SB Nation, where we were able to keyword target and have ads showing up on the city and team pages for the top books that we had. Looking at Facebook, looking at retail opportunities. So this was something that actually every retailer that we were working with was really excited about. You can see at the top of the page, you've got a showcase on Apple, you've got Google Play, you've got Amazon, and then you've got at the bottom some of the Facebook posts as well. And this was doing, instead of a month-long campaign, which you see a lot of the retailers are all about a month of $3.99 and less, we've actually found that doing a shorter sale, so this was a 1-week sale, and then keeping the promotion and advertising going during the month has allowed us to have a much bigger effect on the backside. So the 1-week sale did quite well, but the lift that we saw in the week after and the 2 weeks after actually was where the revenue came in. And so that's what you see here. Downloads went up over 10x during the sale, but even a week later at full price, they stayed at 8x over the week before. And last, talking about campaigns of what we call a blockbuster. Sorry. And the blockbuster campaign is, we only do 2 to 3 of these a year. They're incredibly effective, but extremely exhausting. They are where our teams come together. We actually do one every year on Cyber Monday, which was our entire catalog, so about 4,000 titles on sale last year. And obviously it's grown each year. It was 2,000 the year before. And this is where all of the teams come together and really pool resources and think about how are we going to reach readers across every vertical or imprint that we have. Using pricing and promotion period. In this case, it was July, so summer reading, which is notoriously a slower time, especially in the retail. People are on vacation in the US, so trying to build momentum for the fall. Working with retailers way in advance and creating content that's engaging. So what you have here is what we called 150 summer steals. And the idea was to have 150 titles that are all on sale, a landing page with tabs and features so that we could actually have advertising directed into that particular tab so that we were able to look at nonfiction, contemporary science fiction and fantasy, lifestyle, and each of those imprints or verticals had their budgets directing into a landing page, but consumers crisscrossed between them. Advertising, as you can see, then was done across each of these different areas. So, sorry, I keep forgetting I've got dual screens going. Thank you. There you go. So there's the landing page and emails that went out. And here we go with leveraging advertising across all of the different niches. And again, the interesting thing here is thinking about that you're not driving to a site that is particularly for crafters or a site that's for science fiction and fantasy. This was done leading back to a landing page on Open Road, which then had the tabs and the areas for people to jump in between, so that we leveraged the budgets and the advertising across all of the different areas to get the consumer into a place where they move between. And to Charlotte's point, they do. The click path structure, people stayed on the site for over 3 minutes at a time, and they typically, they jumped between 2 to 4 pages. And they were not all in one genre, and I think that's super important in thinking about who your user is. What you see here is social media advertising. So again, the biggest thing here, and I think that we overlook this all the time as publishers, or we don't keep them up to date or work with them enough, is that our Facebook fan pages for our authors that we co-admin or just admin alone are hugely outscoring and representing click-throughs and impressions and actual click-to-buy. And so one of the things that we have done in the past 3 months is focus more and more with our authors on their author fan pages. I can't stress that enough, that the difference between banner advertising, mobile advertising, even just normal sponsored stories on our Open Road corporate brand versus what we're doing off on the author pages, it's like 10x at least. The number of people that are engaging and then clicking through to the product to buy is exponential on the author side. Retail promotion, again, this was key. I mean, any blockbuster event that we're going to put that much time into has to have the buy-in across all retailers, which it did. And there's a lot of planning that goes into that. So again, downloads increased over 10x from 2 weeks to 2 weeks following. We maintained at 5x, and this was over a much larger list. As I said, the Facebook fan pages for the authors were incredibly successful. The planning was about a 3-month stage. We could use even a little bit longer to secure, less so for retail, but actually the editorial and advertorial placement and getting websites on board. And then what is key here, and this is my last slide, is the follow-up. And the idea that identifying those authors and titles that did extremely well in that and taking that back and doing follow-up. And the 2 biggest things that we did were, number 1, the authors that were successful, we looked for what other books, because we tend to have catalogs of those authors' books. So we looked at what other books by that author we wanted to promote next and what other book by that author we wanted to get to the fans around. And number 2, it was a great way to report back to retail on what authors and books that they should be thinking about for promotions down the line that they may not have thought about prior. And so that's about it. Sorry, I think we're going to take questions at the end. I was speeding through.
some slides. Oh, there we go. I'm Hattie. I work in the publicity department at ThinkJam. We're a full-service digital agency and we're based in Clerkenwell. We started 10 years ago. We now have 60 staff in London, 20 in LA and 3 in our new New York office. We have a team of publicists and social planners and analysts, as well as designers and developers, so we can build websites, apps and ads, as well as a full video production team. Around 2 years ago, our publishing department was officially set up, and in June last year, Vicky Watson at Vintage got in touch to talk to us about working together on a supporting digital campaign for Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy.
It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you about this campaign, as it's one of the most exciting I've had the opportunity to work on. We published this blockbuster book last October, and we knew this had to be one of our biggest ever and most impactful campaigns. Working with a digital agency like ThinkJam allowed us to call on real experts to help strategize, manage, create, and run parts of the campaign for us. In-house teams are often quite time poor, and we all know that social media is a really time-consuming, but obviously incredibly rewarding and important part of campaigns. ThinkJam offered strategy and advice and also allowed us to take a step back and work on the overall campaign itself. Hopefully we'll take you through a little bit more about the campaign, especially on the social and digital side. So our objectives for the campaign were quite clear. We needed to drive conversation and pre-orders way ahead of publication. We needed to help people know the book was coming, help them discover it online. And the most important thing for me was focusing the campaign all around the character of Bridget, reminding people why they loved Bridget, and ensuring that those fans were at the centre of everything we did and was a key message throughout the campaign. We had to do all of this, but globally. As the leading established publisher, we were working with all of our sister companies across the world. And that, of course, comes with its own challenges. The biggest challenge for me, really, was knowing that when the first 2 books were published in the late 90s, digital marketing was really in its infancy and social media didn't exist. It had also been 10 years since the last of the blockbuster films were released. There was no official digital presence for Bridget online. We knew we'd have limited access to the author, and we had to make sure that what we wanted to do socially and digitally was going to work with the more traditional PR and rights activity. All this aside, the biggest challenge for me was selling a book. We had to tell people this was a new Bridget Jones book, not a film, not a DVD, not a box set. It was a book. So working with Hattie and Chloe and the team at ThinkJam, we came up with this 4-point strategy, which we're going to take you through this morning. Reactivate, reveal, grow and launch. We needed to reactivate the hundreds of thousands of fans that we knew were talking about the book online. We amalgamated a huge amount of Facebook fan groups and created one community from which to start working. Keeping fans at the heart of the campaign, we wanted to make sure that they knew stuff first, so we wanted to reveal things to them exclusively. We then needed to grow this audience, grow awareness about the book, and of course grow our pre-orders. And then we wanted to launch the book spectacularly with a huge Bridget Jones fan army behind us. All this while reminding people exactly why they love Bridget.
So, we used the global cover reveal to really kickstart the campaign and pre-order. And rather than giving the cover reveal to a media partner, we felt that this key asset break would have a lot more impact online if it was revealed exclusively to fans on Facebook via an interactive mechanic to really encourage sharing. And this targeted global Facebook activity ran over a period of 24 hours. And our posting in this period had a reach of over 450,000. It generated just under 2,500 new likes on the page and over 9,000 engagements. The cover reveal was really pivotal to setting the tone of the campaign. As we said, we revealed it first to fans in this interactive mechanic, and it really was a global celebration of all things Bridget. We used a thematic image of a wine bottle progressively emptying. And again, going back to the 2 key themes of the campaign, which were Bridget Jones and fans, and all of our messaging had to come back to that. One of the challenges at this point of the campaign was that we had no brand look, because obviously we hadn't revealed the cover. So using the title treatment, our designers at ThinkJam created a series of branded, striking visual assets for us to use on Facebook, which showed the bottle of wine emptying. And messaging accompanying all of the posts encouraged fans to like, comment and share to help drain the bottle. Once it was empty, the cover was revealed on a geo-targeted Facebook tab to ensure that the correct cover and pre-order links were revealed to the user based on their location. And I think it's just a really simple and fun way to re-engage fans on social and to introduce the book and the brand and build general excitement and awareness online about the book. Although we did choose to break the cover on Facebook, we didn't want to miss out on the PR potential of this asset break. This activity didn't exist in isolation, and that was really important. We syndicated a press release to key female lifestyle and entertainment sites at the beginning of the activity, encouraging them to get involved, which many of them did. Once the cover was revealed on Facebook, we then syndicated it to a full press list with accompanying statistics to demonstrate just how much excitement there had been on Facebook about the reveal. And as you can see from this selection of screen grabs, it did get quite a lot of pick-up online, which really ensured the activity really just had the widest reach possible.
Another key reveal of the campaign, as I'm sure some of you may have seen, was the news of Mark Darcy's death. The news was revealed in a major newspaper serial and was then picked up by all newspapers, television and radio news programming, magazines, blogs, and of course, the fans took to social media to tell us what they thought of this significant plot development. We obviously needed to deal with the situation sensitively, as although BuzzFeed did run this rather brilliant piece, as seen on the slide, examining the, one could say, overreactions of certain fans, we need to ensure that this wasn't the thing people were taking away and remembering about the book. We needed to communicate that this was a fun, warm, enthusiastic, humorous Bridget Jones book. We also needed to communicate this news globally, as the news was actually in print and not accessible online. So together with ThinkJam, we came up with a strategy, and we went quiet. On the day of the reveal, we only posted once to confirm the news and shared in the fans' grief. We then stood back and let the conversation move on. In the days after, we started to move the conversation back around to the warmth and humour in the book, using exclusive extracts from the book, talking about the toy boy and the humour and the funny aspects. We asked fans to share their favourite Darcy moments and were able to move the conversation on in a really calm and measured way after the drama of the weekend.
Once we had all the major plot reveals out in the open, our focus moved on to growing the community online, building awareness about the publication, closely monitoring sentiment, and of course driving pre-order. Our content centred around film images, which we sourced from Universal, favourite quotes in the books posted as branded images, extracts from the new book, which are again delivered exclusively to fans via our official social channels, and initiatives encouraging people to engage with our content and share their love for Bridget. Although, as Vicky said, there were no official channels for the book on social before we started the campaign, there were a huge amount of fan and parody accounts, so it was really important that we worked with those accounts to drive our publication message and to build our community online, especially on Twitter. We rewarded fans daily, pretty much, with engagement, new content, spot prizes. Our pre-order message was central to all of our messaging, but we had to be really careful to balance that with the familiar, friendly tone that people so associate with Bridget. And then key moments in the campaign were supported with social advertising spend across both Facebook and Twitter, which gave us the ability to push key moments to a wider audience, both on a global and local scale when we need to. And Vicky's going to talk more about that now.
As I know we're running out of time, we ran some Twitter advertising. It was a company first. We found it really, really impressive to help us reach audiences that were talking about the Darcy news but may not have realised that there was a book coming out. But I won't dwell on that for the moment.
Flying through, I'm just going to talk very quickly. We worked very closely with Vintage and Helen's team to ensure that we covered offline PR with reviews, competitions and features, as well as running social partnerships with Beyond Retro and Oasis, as well as charities to really reach a wider audience in the lead up to publication. Working with somebody like Helen is obviously, a real pleasure. She's really highly regarded. She's very well known. And it allowed us to put a traditional press junket at the heart of our PR campaign. So we secured a number of exclusive placements with key high-traffic, non-traditional book channels, ranging from retail sites like handbag.com to Yahoo, and worked with Helen and the Vintage team to create some bespoke video pieces for sites, which were then pushed live on publication day. We also then syndicated a piece of generic video content, which really gave us another shot at press, basically, on publication day, and a further flurry of activity.
And a key learning for me personally from this campaign was that you can make what's happening offline work online. An event, an appearance, a signing, all of these can work hard to build excitement and engage with digital audiences as well as those there in the flesh. On publication day, we had an amazing lunchtime signing at Foyles. Myself and Hattie and Chloe and the Think Jam team worked the 1.5 hour long queue, tweeting images, engaging with fans, tweeting Vine videos, getting people at home to engage with Helen and what we were doing. To basically increase our reach on publication day. We also, at the evening event, which was actually a charity event for Helen's local library, we invited Key Media, Glamour and Mumsnet to live tweet the event. They trailed this across their channels, tweeted throughout, and people were allowed to ask questions from home. And together this activity reached over 5 million people. So to conclude very quickly, it worked. We had a really good campaign. We were thrilled with the focus on the pre-orders, and that really helped drive our first week sales. We got the #1 spot. It was a #1 bestseller, and it only dropped out of the hardback fiction top 10 this year.
Just to summarise social, we had 1 billion impressions on Twitter throughout the campaign. We averaged 344 tweets every day in the UK. And in the duration of the campaign, we had over 26,000 new Facebook fans. So, yeah, again, we were delighted with the results on social.
So that's it from us, but I just wanted to reiterate that working with a team like this, I think we managed to demonstrate how small amounts of content and limited assets can turn into a really fan-inclusive, incredibly effective digital and social media campaign.
And just if you would like to get hold of either us, that's Vicky and me, you can reach us on those email addresses and on Twitter, but I'll also be around all day if anybody wants to come and have a chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.